According to statistics, at the beginning of 2020, to see how the process of raising millions of cattle here happens. And about 4,500 farms producing a mixture. In Australia, there are about 19,000 beef cattle, Brahman, Hereford, Angus and sheep. The most popular breeds of cattle raised in Australia can be mentioned as or Murray Grey. Currently, the majority of cattle ranches in Australia are concentrated in states such as Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria and Western Australia. The average area of a cattle farm in this country is about 32,000 advantage of the vast land and move their herds to grazing areas further inland, thereby increasing herd numbers. Cattle were brought to Australia by the first British settlers in By the 1800s, however, Australian farmers had 88. Herds grew slowly during the early years of settlement. In recent years, the number of calves born in Australia has fluctuated between 9.5 and 9.8 million each, and 45% of them are born in Queensland for about 3 months before weaning. For cows that do not have the necessary amount of milk, most calves will live with their mothers on the calves will be separated from their mothers earlier, and they will have milk provided by the breeders. This is a cattle farm in the state of New South Wales, where about 230 3-month-old calves are. Cattle in southern Australia is about 430 heads. The farm will use hay to feed the calf. Currently, the average size of a head for. Every day, the work. After about 4 months, the calves will be regularly grazed in the pasture. However, at this stage, they will not be moved too far from the farm like other adults, because most of the food they use every day is in the north. The average herd size is around 1,600 heads. Large pastures to feed, and to be able to move the livestock stable, the cattle breeders will need the help of cattle dogs. Every day, the mature cattle will be herd provided by the breeders. For a herd of about 500 cattle, they can travel about 15 miles a day to reach the new pastures, approximately 831 million acres. Currently, the total area of land used for grazing in Australia, which also includes areas used for grazing goats and sheep. Herds will need to be fed before moving on to new pastures. Time, dry grass and straw will be used. After a long journey, refuel for the next journey. The length of time, a fundamental fact, such as the number of cattle in the herd, the size of the pasture, and cattle will feed on one pasture before moving to another, will depend on every late afternoon, hundreds of cattle will gather at this small. This is a herd in Queensland with about 350 heads in the of the pasture. And afternoons are usually the time when their bodies need to be rehydrated to drink water. On average, an adult cattle needs to drink 10 to 15 gallons of water per herd. Currently, there are about 11,000 beef cattle farms in Queensland, with about 10.7 million head, and annual beef production in Australia. Moving a herd of cattle from a few dozen to a few hundred always requires the help of cattle dogs. Is about 1.3 million tonnes, and about 65% of them are working. It is estimated that currently there are cattle dogs and sheep dogs are very intelligent animals and loyal to their owners. 273,000 dogs working on animal farms in Australia, pre-trained dogs to work on their farms. Dog to master the skill and absolutely obey the owner is something that not all cattle owners can do. As a result, many ranchers or farms. Trading. This is the process of a fenced area. A large herd in Victoria. Here, hundreds of cattle will be. This is a much harder job than moving livestock from one pasture to another before they are transferred to beef factories or sold to. Gathering a herd of up to 100 cattle is not an easy thing for herders. In 2022, the number of cattle in these helicopters will be used to prevent any cows from escaping is 24.7 million heads, and this number behind these two states is Victoria with 3.6. In addition to Queensland, includes both dairy and beef cattle. New South Wales is also one of the states with the largest number of cattle in the country, with 4.4 million head. Here's what's going on inside a beef. Each year, about 8.3 in Australia, 0.3 to 2.7 million tonnes. Currently, up to 10% of beef production in Australia. Annual beef production in the country ranges 1 million cows are slaughtered in Australia. Because the majority of cattle in Australia is consumed domestically, grazing, the quality of beef in Australia is exported to other countries, and the remaining is always highly appreciated by consumers all around the world. Cow's milk is one of the most commonly consumed food items in the United States. This country have drunk cow's milk, and 69% of them use cow's milk for drinking and food every day. According to statistics, in 2020, up to 92% of households as of 2022, there are 33,000, a decrease of 1,813 compared to 2021. 148 dairy farms in the United States. People's demand for cow's milk is decreasing, and the amount of milk produced is always more than, in which Holstein is the most raised dairy breed, with about 8.1 million. Currently, there are 7 different breeds of dairy cows across the country, and these are the main reasons why dairy farms have to close, accounting for 89% of the total dairy herd in the United States. In addition, the Jersey is the second most raised dairy breed in the country at about 7%. Stillborn or die within the first 40. According to the USDA statistics, each year about 1.1 million dairy calves are born across the country, and 5.7% of them slaughtered after about 13 to 14 each, raising a male calf for several hours after birth. In particular, all male dairy calves will be sold to beef farms and will also cost ranchers additional costs. On some small farms, male dairy calves will be shot dead before slaughter. The most logical solution is to sell them immediately in the world. Attach ear tags to dairy calves. This is considered a humanitarian measure. After about 20 days from birth, breeders will start tag calves. Currently, most of the stage. This worker is preparing milk for the calves. Dairy industry standard. All dairy calves will be separated from their mothers. This is considered within 24 hours from birth. To get calves at 1 month of age, each dairy calf needs about 1.2 gallons of milk per day. It also helps prevent infection in calves from exposure to contaminated feces. This amount of milk is equivalent to 15% of their body weight. A habit of docile self-drinking. It usually takes about the first of 5 days for farm owners to get them used to bottle feeding. This is also the hardest time for workers on dairy farms in the United States that are small and have pasture for grazing. Calves can live with their mothers weaning. Dairy cows are considered fully mature when 15 to 19 months of age. On some dairy County, California. At this point, the average weight of a dairy cow is about 1,200 to 1,600 pounds, depending on the breed. This is the process of harvesting silage corn near a dairy farm. Currently, California is the state with the largest number of cows in the country, with about 1.72 million. The next places are Wisconsin with 1.2 million and cows. For many years now, Wisconsin has always been the largest producer with 635,000. According to USDA statistics, each year dairy farms in the United States consume about 18% of domestically produced silage, which is equivalent to 23 million tons of silage of corn silage in the country, with about 23 million tons. After about 3 weeks from harvest, millions of tons of twice the amount of corn produced in California. Silage at this farm have been used to feed dairy cows. In addition, about 20 a mature dairy cow typically eats about 30 pounds of bale and grain per day. This is the silage is also consumed by the process at a dairy farm in Idaho. If you were there, would you do this job? The workers working at this farm will clean the ground about every 3 days before being discharged into the environment or used to fertilize fields. In 2021, there are 425 dairy. Tens of tons of cow manure will be transferred to wastewater treatment tanks to inside of the farm to cover the floor. Farm in Texas. The workers here are moving bales of dry straws and heads. Here's what's going on in Idaho. With a total herd of 635, with a total herd of about 500 area, this method will be used to keep the floor of the barn dry. For dairy farms that are small but do not have a currently in Texas, there are 351 dairy farm in Florida. The 5,000 cows. The cows on this farm are considered the happiest cows in the United States. This rancher hired dairy cows. These dairy cows show great interest in the musicians playing, and they do not hesitate to approach the concert area to come to his farm and play jazz music to see how the milking process for thousands of cows takes place. Currently, in Florida, there are only about 50. Next, we will go to the milking dairy farms and 127,000 cows. Football match. Seen from this position, they look like spectators preparing to ensure milking takes place. These workers clean and one by one, the dairy cows will move into their positions for the workers to milk the cows' udders. Next, these devices will be fitted to the udder. With more than 9 million dairy cows, milking for each cow will be done within 5 to 7 minutes. Being raised, milk production in 2021 in the United States is 221 dairy cows to initiate the milking process. $6 billion in pounds, and the total revenue from the dairy industry is about